Welcome to Drinks and Dunks. This is the annual inaugural podcast. Welcome to Drinks and Dunks. This is the inaugural YouTube episode video. We're getting started here. This is a NBA channel where I, myself, not an expert of the NBA by any means, but one of the biggest fans, somebody who's pretty much obsessed with the NBA, if I'm being completely honest. And anyone that knows me, my close friends and family, know that, it's constantly running through my mind all day long. Something that, I just feel like I got to get my thoughts out there and maybe build a community with the viewers. So that's the goal here of this podcast, is just to talk about the NBA. I know there's a lot of people out there already talking about the NBA, and believe me, I listen to a ton of them. I'm not an expert by any means, but I do follow it pretty closely. I'm a pretty analytically driven person, and I guess just the point of this show is to, create a conversation about the NBA, get the thoughts out of my head, put them on a video, maybe engage with the viewers and some other of my friends or people that watch the NBA, talk about the NBA that I talk with a lot, and just to drink some beer. So the show's called Drinks and Dunks. It's an NBA show. I'm going to be drinking a different beer each week. I'll talk a little bit about the beer. Not sponsored by anyone, just enjoy beer. As you guys can probably tell, I'm a pretty big Bucks fan. I live here in Milwaukee. Had season tickets last year. And so I might be a little biased when it comes to them. But that's just all part of it. And no, I won't be just specifically talking about the Bucks. I'll be talking about the whole NBA. And being from Wisconsin, beer is a pretty big part of our culture. Something that we enjoy to partake in. So it'll be fun. If you guys want to see me drink different kinds, different styles, leave comments in the comments section. We can certainly play around with that. And at the end of the show, I'll be making some predictions. And if I get those right, there'll be some sort of reward. If I get them wrong, I'll just be taking longer drinks, different things like that, maybe some shotguns, who knows. We can get kind of creative with it. But the inaugural beer, being from Milwaukee, I had to go with a fine Pilsner and Miller Lite. No, not sponsored. Like I said, just a beer that, it's really solid. It kind of reminds me of, I guess I could compare it to the Utah Jazz. Just a solid beer. They're not going to win you any titles, at least not with their core of Mitchell and Gobert. The newly inked Gobert, I might add, for a cool $205 million, which we'll maybe touch on later. But like I said, just a solid beer, a good one to start out with. Kind of my go-to if I'm going light beers, for sure. So yeah, we're starting off strong with the Miller Lite. Next, I just want to get into the season. We're sitting here Tuesday, December 21st. Season starts tomorrow. I'm going to kind of run through the standings last year, see how I think if they got better, worse over the offseason. And then at the end, I'll make predictions on the first two games on Tuesday night tomorrow. So I'm pretty excited for the season to start. Kind of a shortened offseason due to everything that's going on with the COVID and the bubble. But, so a lot of the teams didn't get to practice, didn't get to play together a ton, so that'll definitely factor in to how they start out, which we'll get to. So I'm going to start with the Western Conference, go in order of standings on how they finished the season last year, and then we'll move on to the Eastern Conference. So, of course, you got your defending champion Los Angeles Lakers getting a lot of buzz in the preseason. Obviously they're returning LeBron and AD, so they're going to contend, right? I fully expect them to be back right there in the 1 seed. And I think, people expect LeBron and AD to take games off, which they certainly will. But if you look at their additions that they added this season, Dennis Schroeder, they traded Danny Green in the first for. They acquired Montrezl Harrell via free agency. They lost guys like JaVale, Dwight Howard, Rondo, who are more more playoff-driven players, if I'm being honest. So I think they did improve their roster this offseason. I do have some questions about their playoff defense, as Rondo played outstanding for them. Dwight and JaVale also played phenomenal for them. Danny Green, even though he missed some big shots, he's a career 40% three-point shooter. Now they did add Wes Matthews, who was on the Bucks last year, so I kind of know a bit about him off the top. But I do think they did get better in the regular season. I have some questions about their playoff defense, like I said. But overall, I think they got better. I think they're going to stay in the 1 seed. And I think, as everyone said, I think they're probably the championship favorite at this point. Number 2, we got the Clippers. Not a ton happened in their offseason. They made a draft day trade, traded Shamet, got in Luke Kennard. It's kind of a quick scorer off the bench. Give you some quick buckets. They added Serge Ibaka, obviously lost Montrez. They had a crazy disappointing end of the season there, losing that 3-1 lead to the Nuggets in the bubble. I do think, and I'll touch on this when I get to some of the other teams, some of the Eastern Conference teams, I think the bubble was weird for some teams, weird for some players. It was a completely different experience than anyone has seen or even experienced before, so I think that did play a factor, and them not being as close as like the Lakers and the Heat, I think did play a factor in them eventually blowing that lead. Do they think they got better? Marginally. I do think Serge Ibaka is a better player than Montrez. I also think Kennard's a better player than Shamet. They didn't really play Shamet that much. So I do think they got better on the margins. I don't know if they're going to take a giant leap forward. They also replaced Doc with Ty Lue, and I think we're really going to figure out this season if Ty Lue's a really good coach or, if LeBron and Kyrie kind of led him to that title, because we know what Doc is. We know Doc's a pretty good coach. He's a solid coach. Not great when it comes to the playoffs. He does have that title with the Celtics, but he has had some blown 3-1 leads in the past. So I think we're really going to figure out if Ty Lue's a good coach or not. Moving on, we got the Nuggets. Lost Jeremy Grant. Added JaMychal Green, I believe. This all hinges on Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray. If Jamal Murray plays like he did in the bubble, averages 25, and Michael Porter can play somewhat serviceable defense and get more minutes, I think he's going to light it up offensively if he can stay healthy. I mean, the guy's a 6'10" bucket. That's just what it is. I think if Murray and Porter Jr. play, Murray, if he plays the way he did in the bubble and Porter Jr. plays the way he can, I think they could be a real threat to the top two. But right now I have them on the tier below. Rockets, what a dumpster fire. I'm just going to take a drink to the whole Rockets situation. This all hinges on James Harden. Obviously, they traded Westbrook for Wall, brought in Boogie, signed Christian Wood. And I like their head coach Stephen Silas. I think he architected or helped architect one of the best offenses in history last year in Dallas. I do like him. I think he deserved to be a head coach. He's been an assistant for a really long time. But it all hinges on James Harden. If he sticks around and they make it work like the Rockets did with Hakeem back in the 90s, the Lakers did with Kobe, the Spurs did with Duncan, he could stay, hypothetically. He doesn't seem happy right now. They could start out, win 18 of their first 22 games or something crazy, and he could be happy. I don't know. I don't know the guy personally. I'm not going to comment on him as a player. He's phenomenal. He doesn't perform at the same level in the playoffs, but he does perform pretty well overall. And it all hinges on him. We can see where he goes, but if they have him, I fully expect them to be a top 4 seed. Moving on, we got the Thunder. Pretty much gutted everyone. Traded CP to the Suns. They're in rebuilding mode. There's no hiding that. Pokusevski is going to get a ton of minutes. Small, spindly guy they took with the 19th pick. It's going to be a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander show. I'm going to be honest, I don't even know who their new head coach is. But they let Billy Donovan go. And so, yeah, it's going to be the rebuilding show, and they're going to be one of the worst teams in the league for sure. They're capping for Cade, fading for Cade. I don't know what you want to call it, but they're going after Cade Cunningham, the future number 1 pick, probably the way he looks at Oklahoma State right now. Just an amazing prospect, a 6'7" wing, a guy who can really score the ball. But yeah, they're going to be one of the worst teams in the West. Jazz, newly inked big man, Rudy Gobert, $205 million. I mean, it's Donovan. It's the same team. They're essentially, if Mike Conley can play better, they'll have one of the Bogdanovich boys. They'll have him back. He was a big part of their offense, a big reason why they struggled and got bounced in the first round to the Nuggets last year in the bubble. But they'll have him back, and they're going to compete. Like I said, they're like a nice Miller Lite. I don't know if they're going to take you to the title. I really don't think they are, but they could get to the second round and make it a little difficult for one of these top end teams. Mavs. This is the biggest variant team in basketball, in my opinion. Obviously, Luka Doncic is the favorite for MVP. Rick Carlisle won a title, wonderful coach. They like their move where they traded Seth Curry for Josh Richardson, add some defense next to Luka. Can still shoot the ball pretty well. I mean, he's not historic Seth Curry, but still shoot the ball pretty well, and I really want to see what he can do on this team. I like their draft picks in Josh Green and Tyrell Terry. But, if Porzingis isn't there, I think this team's really limited with their big man play. But if Porzingis can stay healthy, they could really make a run at it here if Luka continues on his trajectory. And then the Blazers, they added Robert Covington, which I think is really going to help them, honestly. They missed that wings depth. Mario Hezonja was playing some minutes for them, so they were really thin when they lost Aminu and when they lost their wings last offseason. So, Dame and Nurkic are studs. CJ's a stud. Covington's a solid player. And I think this is a really deep team. I think they could be a top 4 seed in the West. I mean, the West is really tough. If we're going to be honest, like every team minus the Thunder, Spurs, and T-Wolves and Kings, all these teams are going to compete, right? The Warriors are going to be better. The Grizzlies, Ja Morant could take another step. They got Brandon Clark. They got Dylan Brooks. They got JV. The West is so deep, honestly. And other than the Lakers and the Clippers, those are the top 2 for sure. But after that, you have a lot of teams where they have a high upside. If some of these young guys like Jamal Murray, like Donovan Mitchell, if they take that next step, like Luka, I think they could really compete with the Lakers and Clippers, because the Lakers and Clippers each have 2 guys. And outside of that, they're not the deepest teams in the league. I don't think I'm being crazy by saying that hypothetically one of these teams, if their superstars their nice young players take another leap, I think they could really challenge those top 2. So that's how I see the West shaking out. On top, I still think it's going to be the Lakers and the Clippers. I actually think they will have a conference finals where those 2 meet up in June, in July, and I think we're gonna get what we missed out on last year. Moving over to the East, we got my Bucks. We acquired Drew Holiday. Obviously, we missed out on Bogdanovich, which was painstaking. But the biggest and most impactful move this offseason that a team did was Giannis Antetokounmpo re-signing with the Supermax. He's gonna be here for 5. Hopefully 6 more years, and that really, it opens up the window for him. I don't want to spend a ton of time on him because everyone knows about the Bucks. They've been in the headlines a lot recently, and big Bucks fan, so it is what it is. But can Budenholzer make those adjustments? Can the bench play as well as the bench played last year? I really don't think they lost as much talent from the bench as other people think they did. I think Wes Matthews, George Hill, completely overrated. Robin Lopez, these guys are replaceable, and I think they did that adequately. Now, are they going to be as good defensively off the bench? I don't think so, but I think they're going to be better offensively, so I think it might wash out. But it all comes down to Budenholzer and Giannis. If Budenholzer is willing to adjust, he's willing to switch on defense, and if Giannis finds a mid-range and can figure out how to operate, in the post, in the mid-range, and if Drew's the X factor. Can he run a pick and roll with Giannis effectively? We're gonna see. And if he can, I think they'll be in the finals. But I'm a homer, so we'll move on. Next, we got the Raptors. Lost Marc Gasol, lost Serge Ibaka, added Aaron Baines. So, this team is the best coach team in the league, in my opinion. I think it's between them and the Heat with Spoelstra and Nurse, and they're going to be right there. I think they're going to win a lot more games than everyone thinks because they always do. They develop really well. They draft really well. And I think they're going to be right there. I think they could be the 2 seed. I think they could be the 1 seed. But if they were the 5 or 6, it wouldn't shock me either. Moving on to the Celtics. Losing Gordon Hayward for nothing hurts. I know they thought they had a sign and trade worked out with the Pacers. It didn't work out. But, in a nutshell, losing Gordon Hayward hurts. Kemba Walker's knee also scares me. If you lose those 2 players, Jason Tatum's going to have to turn into a top 3 player for this team to play as well as they did last year. Now, I still think they're top 5 seed in the East. I still think they have a really high ceiling with Brown and Tatum going to be sharing more of the load, especially with Kemba starting out, with Gordon Hayward. So I think if they do take that next step, I think it's going to be because of those top 2 guys. And it's possible. Anything's possible. Brad Stevens is a good coach. I think he's a tad overrated in the playoffs. But, yeah, that's the Celtics. Moving on to the Pacers. Pacers are a team, personally, I'm pretty down on this year. They didn't lose a lot, but also they didn't really add a ton, if we're being honest. The big addition, of course, is Oladipo coming back, and if he can return to how he looked previously, we can get to see him with Brogdon a little bit more. I'm not sure if the Turner-Sabonis thing is going to work out. I think they might have to deal Turner at some point, but they still got T.J. Warren, Aaron Holiday. They have a good team. I do think Nate McMillan was a good coach and got a lot out of him, so if their new coach isn't as good as Nate McMillan and can't get us enough out, I do see them taking a little step backwards. I think they're going to be in the play-in tournament somewhere between the 7 and 10 seed. Heat. The Heat are an enigma. I think something that's being really lost this offseason is how important Jay Crowder was to this team. The guy was a flamethrower. He was a chucker for sure, but he also brought that Heat mentality, that grit, that grind, and I know when they bounced us in the playoffs, he was a major factor. Just a guy like Jimmy who just gets under your skin and can hit a big shot, and he really did. Losing him, they replaced him with Avery Bradley, but they lost him and Derrick Jones Jr., and Derrick Jones Jr. didn't do much, but I do think that loss is going to be huge, and I think they were the team that benefited the most from playing in the bubble. I think Jimmy Butler fits the bubble atmosphere 100% perfect. The guy's a maniac. He's in the gym at 2 a.m. I think he will thrive perfectly in the bubble, and I think that's why they got to the finals last year, if I'm being honest. 76ers. I think this is another team where we're going to really figure out if Brett Brown was a good coach or not. They lost talent, but they added fit. Daryl Morey's the GM. They could make a Harden trade. So they have a lot of moving pieces. They traded Josh Richardson for Seth Curry, like I mentioned earlier. They traded Al Horford. So they got worse in talent, but they added Danny Green. But I think they got a lot better in shooting and fit. So we're going to see what Simmons and Embiid are made out of. Doc Rivers is going to probably get the most out of them in the regular season. They're going to be a top 4 seed in the West. Embiid and Simmons are too good not to. But I really think we're going to see if Brett Brown was helping them or hurting them. The Nets. The Nets are a team that, they brought pretty much everyone back. They added Shamet, traded their 19th pick for Shamet, added a whole new coaching staff with Steve Nash and company, rookie head coach, and obviously added KD, but everyone else is back right now. Obviously, if they make a James Harden trade, it changes everything, but the Nets are a team that is going to be really, really good offensively. KD and Kyrie can get any shot they want at any point. That's just the reality of the situation. And if they can play any sort of defense, Jared Allen, DeAndre Jordan, a little bit of rim protection there for sure. But if they can get some sort of defense, they got 4 guys that can score from anywhere on the court. and can create their own shot, which we've seen is really important when it comes to playoff time. So with Dinwiddie, with LeVert, with Kyrie, and with KD, each one of those guys at the end of the shot clock with the ball in their hands can make something out of nothing. And I think that's really valuable. I see this team going to the conference finals against the Bucks. I think the Bucks will come out on top just because I'm a homer, and that's just who I am. But if they put it together, I think they're going to be a really fun team and a really tough out in the playoffs. And then we got the rest, right? So I think that's a clear top 7 in the East. I think, it's comparable to the top 7 in the West, if I'm being honest. The rest of these teams are not as good as the West. So, the East is still inferior to the West, in my opinion. But it's not as big of a divide as it once was, and there's not as much star talent discrepancy, KD moving over, Russell Westbrook, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just going to run through the rest of these teams real quick, and then we're going to get down to my season prediction. And that one's going to be for a shotgun at the end of the season, so we'll see what happens there. We got the Wizards. The Wizards are one of my teams that I'm most excited to watch. Adding John Wall, re-signing Bertans, Russell Westbrook. This team is going to be the most space Russell Westbrook's ever had to operate, and I think Beal next to Westbrook has a chance to be a really good duo. I think they could crack the top 4 in the East, and I don't feel like I'm being hyperbolic by saying that, because I think Russell Westbrook is one of the most underrated players at this point, because he doesn't fit every team. He's kind of an enigma in that sense, but I do think he is one of the most underrated players at this point, just because, he can still put up 28, 8, and 8, and players can score next to him. I don't know. I just don't think he's as bad as is viewed by everyone that's been talking about him lately. If he can cut down the bad three-point attempts and just attack the rim and kick to Bertans and kick to Beal and kick to Troy Brown Jr. and kick to Thomas Bryant, who's a solid three-point shooter, I think this team could make some noise. Hornets, LaMelo Ball is going to be fun to watch. Gordon Hayward injury problems suck. It does suck, but I think they'll be better. Bulls, coaching is an upgrade for sure. Having Billy Donovan there will help them. They'll win a few more games, but I'm not expecting anything too crazy out of them. The Knicks, they didn't make any dumb choices. They played it safe. I hope Tibbs plays their rookies and their young guys, and I hope RJ Barrett takes another step, but I fully expect them to be in the bottom 4 in the East. Pistons, same deal. Troy Weaver loves centers. That's pretty much it. I could see them trading Derrick Rose and Blake Griffin at some point. We'll see what we can get out of Killian Hayes and Sadiq Bey. But yeah, I fully expect them to be pretty bad. I don't think they'll be making a push, but it wouldn't shock me if they made the play-in tournament, maybe get the 9th or 10th seed. Hawks I think they're going to be a playoff team. They probably made the biggest additions, adding Bogdanovic, adding Gallinari, and I think, essentially they added Capella too, because he didn't play for them after they traded for him last season due to injury. So I do think they're going to take a step forward. I don't know how much because of their defense. I don't know exactly, who's going to play defense on that team. But if Trae Young's putting up 30 and Bogdan, adding 15, Gallinari off the bench, I think they're going to be really tough, and they could just outscore a lot of teams. And then the Cavs, we'll see what Okoro looks like. See if Garland and Colin Sexton can play together, and Darius Garland. And yeah, we'll see, if Drummond or Kevin Love gets traded, Cedi Osman, we'll see what happens there. But I think that was going to round out the East. It's kind of wide open this year, if we're being honest. Obviously being a Bucks fan, I think the Bucks are going to make the finals. I really do. And if I'm going to make a prediction here, I'm going Bucks out of the East over the Nets, and I'm going Clippers over the Lakers this year out of the West. I think it's going to be a Bucks and Clippers finals, and, got the Bucks taking it home. It's a homer pick, so take it with a grain of salt, but that's just how I see it. I think it's going to be a really fun, fast-paced season, and, I hope I hope, we get vaccines and stuff with the COVID, and we can get some fans in the stands for playoffs. All right, looking ahead to Tuesday's games, we got the Warriors at the Nets. Nets are favored by 7, and the Clippers at the Lakers. Lakers are -3, so they're favored by 3. First game, I think the Nets have a little more continuity. I'm interested to see with the Warriors what Wiseman looks like, what Steph looks like, what Draymond looks like, and Oubre and Wiggins playing with all those guys. I think the Lakers' upside's there, but I think it's going to take a little bit of time for them to gel. I do think the Nets have a bit more continuity, and I think you kind of saw that in preseason where they kind of dominated the competition, if I'm being honest. KD looked great. I'm going Nets -7 there. And then the next game, I think the Clippers are going to win this one. I think they got more to play for. I think Paul George and Kawhi were kind of embarrassed last year, if I'm being honest. And I just think they're going to take it a lot more seriously. And the Lakers did add quite a few pieces. And so I think they're going to have to work those guys in the rotation. I think it's going to take a little time to gel. So I'm going Clippers +3. And, if I get these picks wrong, I'll be doing a little bit of chugging. It's fine. It might not be a Miller Lite, but it'll be something good. And if I get them right, I'm still working on the reward for that. So if you guys have any suggestions, feel free to drop a link down below. Not drop a link. Post a comment and let me know what you think I should get rewarded for. Or if you have a different idea for what my punishment should be for getting them wrong, let me know. All right, guys. Like I said, this is going to be a work in progress. I'm not expecting for this to be a hit right away. I'm not expecting for a ton of people to watch right away, but it's just kind of me getting all my thoughts out there, spitting them down and hoping to get some engagement, some reaction, some comments. So feel free to chat below if you guys are watching. Let me know what you think I could do better. It's just going to be a work in progress for sure. And I, at some point, hope to create a little community here to talk about basketball and, discuss trades. I'm going to be doing power rankings. I'm going to be doing it all. I'm going to have the Skip Bayless hot take of the week coming at you. I'm going to be, releasing segments here and there, but, it's kind of a long first episode, but just had a lot to get out before the season starts, and go Bucks. Peace.